Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us on the weTHRIVE podcast, where we're sharing stories from entrepreneurs from around the world about how they're creating an impactful legacy. I'm your host, Casey Clark, and the founder and chief growth officer of C. Clark Consulting. And today I have the pleasure of interviewing Whitney Hahn, who is a small business advisor with Provoke Better. So thank you so much for joining us today, Whitney.
An absolute pleasure, Casey. Thanks for having me on your show.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about you.
Well, I'm a Capricorn. No, that's a different show. We're not talking about that. You already mentioned I'm a small business advisor. I'm actually a two-time entrepreneur before I started doing a lot of advisory stuff. And I'm somebody that had entrepreneurship modeled for me at an early age. My parents also own a small business, and I worked in that business growing up. So I got to see all the cool stuff about owning a business, and I got to see all the struggles that many small business owners have. And I think for a lot of particularly service-based businesses, I would consider your business, Casey, a service-based business. We often start that business because we're good at a task. We're good at a skill. And so we're like, oh, okay, I'm good at this. I'll start a business where I get to do that thing. But what we often don't realize is that as soon as we start a business around that thing, we now have a ton of other responsibilities. We don't get to do just the thing. We also have to market the thing and price the thing and do proposals for the thing and get insurance for the thing that we want to do. It becomes immediately so much more complicated than I think Forbes magazine wants to talk to you about how it is, right? It's very different when you read Inc. or Forbes, Entrepreneur magazine. There's just a whole level of information that seems to be missing from the discussion. And I certainly fell prey to that early on and had to work very hard paying a huge tuition to the School of Hard Knocks before I figured it out.
Yeah, I feel like so many of us have done that, myself included. So I feel your pain.
Thank you for seeing me, Casey. Thank you.
Anytime. Awesome. So I'm really, really curious. I've heard you speak at different places. I've attended some workshops that you've had. Obviously, you're really involved in the Frederick community. So what exactly does that word thrive mean to you?
Thrive to me is more than just what's on the balance sheet of a business that you may run or a department that you may be in charge of. Again, in the business conversations, we often would say to each other, if I saw you at a chamber event, for example, hey, Casey, how's it going? And you might say, as I get 8 out of 10 times, and I've done the math on this, oh, I'm so busy. Mm-hmm. Busy seems to be how people view themselves as being useful.
Yeah.
Busy seems for many people to see how they indicate they're thriving. I'm busy, I'm busy, I'm busy. And at some point, I don't know, maybe about 8 or 10 years ago, I started to really observe this in our conversations and in our habits. And it started to rub me as a completely inaccurate way to measure whether or not I was thriving. Yeah. I didn't feel like I was thriving merely because I was busy. Productivity does not necessarily come from being busy. Some of my most productive insights, ideas, and innovations have come immediately after vacation, when I, in theory, have not been busy.
Yeah.
So thriving for me includes rest time, includes contribution to my community, includes conversation with great people in your life who challenge you, like you often do when we're in the mastermind group that we get to share in together. Thriving to me is about not just work-life balance, but a whole life integration. And being able to be present for my family. My mom and dad, for example, they're 81 and 82 years old. My dad's about to turn 82. I am delighted that they're still in my life and doing as well as they are. But I know statistically, they're not going to be around forever, right? Well, realistically, they won't be around forever. Statistically, it may happen sooner than I wanted to. So when mom says, hey, we're going to come into town today, we want to see a matinee, that new cute Ryan Reynolds movie is out. You want to go see that? I want to be able to say yes. And every time I can do that, Casey, I feel like I'm thriving.
I love that. Yeah. So true. So true. So what obstacles have you come across as you've been trying to get to that point?
How much time you got on the podcast, girl? This is a long
Not days, not days.
Obstacles, I think, are not unique to me and the ones that I've encountered. And we've touched on some of them already. The first being that I don't think that our entrepreneurial community does any of us a favor by not talking about the obstacles, by highlighting, oh, it's freedom of time and freedom of revenue, and you get to set your own schedule and be your own boss. My boss was totally uneducated for a long time when I first started working for myself, right? You follow that circle.
Got it.
Talking about me, completely not in the clue. And so the first obstacle was learning how to run a business, not just do the thing or complete the skill that I was good at in providing a particular service. Second obstacle included understanding how to delegate to people. People who are very good at a skill are not automatically good at teaching other people how to be relatively good at that skill as well. We're notoriously horrible at documenting processes, about figuring out what a streamlined and optimized workflow could be, about teaching other people how to make decisions in the same way that we might make decisions so that they might get to a similarly successful outcome that we would. Yeah. So these were some of the obstacles that I had to overcome in order to delegate, help people on my team and the contractors that I work with find their growing edge, play into their strengths, and open up more time for me to thrive.
I love it. So what resources have you used as you've gotten into thriving more?
A lot of this has to do with getting in front of new information. There were three main sources of that information that I used. One included mastermind groups and coaching groups where I was exposed to people who had done in their businesses what I wanted to do. The expression is, if you want to do something successful, follow the pattern of other successful people. So being in those splash zones of other ways to think about running your business was important to me. And that came through classes, courses, mastermind groups. The second source of information for me were podcasts. I love to go for a walk and listen to a podcast, or I'll listen to one while I'm driving, because it forces me to focus on that. And then I can sort of mull over that information and think about what I can pull from that to bring into my own business. How can this concept be incorporated into my life? How can I draw from this idea to benefit my next project, my next hire, my next collaboration with a freelancer or a contractor? And then the third classic choice of information is in books. If you were in my office right now, you would see that I'm almost literally surrounded by books. And I love diving into books. Sometimes I don't even finish the book because I get the nugget out of it that I need. And I think for, $12 or $15 for most business books, that is an excellent way to spend $12 or $15. Make yourself smarter. And again, think about how you can incorporate those new ideas and perspectives into the work that you do.
Yeah. So what is your favorite book? I have to know.
Well, my favorite business book is probably The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. It was one that I read.
Person.
What's that?
I said you're a process person.
Well, it's only through process that I've been able to open up time, right?
Yeah.
Process. When you have your processes optimized, you have more options for how you want to spend your time. If your processes are always messy, you're always going to be the one doing them.
Yep.
Let the noodle on that one for a while. So the E-Myth was definitely one that helped me think about processes, helped me think about my role as an entrepreneur, not simply a manager or a technician in those three levels, the way that Michael Gerber describes them.
Awesome. I love it. So the big question, how are you creating a legacy, and what exactly does legacy mean to you?
I think that I will always be working on creating a legacy. I'm not sure that that's one of those things where you can check it off on your list and say, boom, legacy secured.
Yeah.
I've been having conversations recently with some friends and colleagues of mine about conceptually, if you had your name on something, what would be that thing you wanted your name on? If you think about the community that you live in, there are names on wings of the hospitals. There are names on reading rooms in the library. There are names on community awards or awards that you might be given at a service organization. There are names on streets. What is it that gets someone to a point where other people say, you know what, that's a very Whitney Hahn thing to do. We're going to name that room, that building, that street, that award after Whitney. And honestly, Casey, I don't have the answer to what that is for me yet, what I would want it to be yet. I'm still working on that. But I will tell you that I know it won't be acquired. It won't be something that I achieve because I've spent more time at work. It'll be something that I
Amen
will.
to that.
Work is important. And when I optimize my business, I give myself lots more choices in all the other areas of my life. But for a long time, I had the perspective backwards, that I would get the thing that I wanted because I was working hard, that my identity was far too tied up into my work. And now I realize the work is a means to an end. I optimize my work so I have the time to contribute, to volunteer, to be present at a service organization event or at a fundraising event. That's where my legacy will come from. And I think at the end of the day, if people say about me, Whitney always brought light and lift into every conversation, that might be my legacy. And I would be completely content with that.
Yeah, you definitely do. You always know when Whitney's in the room.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I definitely appreciate it. So you have mentioned kind of reading and listening to podcasts and the nuggets that you get. What is one nugget that you would give to someone who might just be starting out in entrepreneurship or just really just trying to thrive in life?
It is important to not fill your schedule so tightly with, air quotes, busy, that you don't have time for the people and the activities in your life that really matter to you. Life is short. It will go by faster than any of us imagine. And we never know exactly how much time we have. So make sure that you have enough white space in your schedule for imagination, for creativity, for contribution, and for play. Because if you don't, whatever you're trying to accomplish with your business will not be sustainable. And my fear for you is that if you're in that place, you would be sacrificing far too much of what's really, really important for the sake of busy or markers that Forbes and Entrepreneur and Inc. magazine want us to think help us thrive and contribute to our legacy.
Yeah, absolutely. Gave me goosebumps. Thank you for sharing that. So I so appreciate it. So how can our listeners get in touch with you or see what Whitney is up to?
The best way to do that is to go to my website, which is provokebetter.com. And Casey, just for listeners of weTHRIVE podcast, I'm going to set up a special page, provokebetter.com/weTHRIVE, where I'll put some free materials that relate to the what I call meconomics of your life that we talked about today, ways that you can get in touch, an exercise that you can do in about 30 minutes to help you identify those really important people and activities in your life and how you will define thriving. So look for that at provokebetter.com/weTHRIVE. And that's my free gift for your listeners.
Thank you. A woman after my own heart. So I love it. Well, I really do appreciate it. I'm excited to get that out for our listeners. And again, thank you so much for joining us today. It has definitely been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Casey. I really appreciate everything that you do in our community. And thanks for being a great part of the mastermind group that where you and I got to know each other first.
Absolutely. And I'd also like to thank Stephen Lamar Moore, who does the music for our podcast. So thanks, Stephen, for adding a little groove. And thank you, of course, to our listeners.